know those of you that are frequent flyers in the CETE are wondering why I'm standing in front of you, because it's not Dr. Dirksen, but Dr. Dirksen had a conflicting event and asked me to introduce and facilitate the event, mostly because I've invited our guests to our campus today. Some of you might, we did this a few years ago. Did anybody come to that one a few years ago? We had a UTC rep come. He's a full-time Veterans Affairs staff member down at UTC, and it was very good feedback. So we want to do it again, and we thank you all for coming today for this session of how to serve veterans. Let me introduce our speaker to you, and then we'll jump right to it. Gregg Crawford is here today with us. Gregg with 2 G's. How'd that happen, Gregg? I don't know.
Mom's weird.
Mom's weird. Okay, good. So Gregg Crawford is here with us today. Gregg is he's from the Tennessee Department of Veterans Affairs. He is Veterans Affairs Coordinator, and he represents East Tennessee. Specifically, this training session that he's been doing on campuses flows out of the state of Tennessee's answer to the demand for green zone training across the nation. It's a way to help communicate the struggles of student veterans to faculty, staff, and fellow students across the campus. In this presentation today, we will learn about the student veteran, who she or he is, the military culture, and then ways to help the student veterans be successful. So we're very pleased to have on our campus, not for the first time, but back on our campus. Will you welcome, please? We'll applaud for Gregg Crawford. Will you do that? Come on, Gregg.
Thank you, Phil. I'll just go right into it. So empowerment training is designed for the faculty and staff to equip you with the resources and just the knowledge of the transitional challenges that face student veterans. And so we want them to succeed on this campus and across Tennessee. This is a picture of me. I served in the Marines for 4 years. After the 4 years, I quickly realized the difference between a private and a lieutenant, and I wanted to be a lieutenant. Being a private was not as fun as I thought it would be, and so I got out and decided to go to college. And there, I worked at the registrar's office, and I found out a few things about student veterans that I didn't have to deal with because I was 22 years old. I had taken online classes while I was in. It was still fresh in my mind. But my counterparts were all 35 years old and have been removed from the classroom for 18 years. And so this is gonna go crazy. But and so I started to realize that maybe I shouldn't focus on my own education, and I should focus on how to get my fellow brothers and sisters to stay in school, because I saw the need for an education in our military culture, but I didn't know how I was going to do it then. It started off as being a social media coordinator with the registrar's office, and it turned into becoming the president, which led to meeting people and being employed by the state. And so now I am the coordinator for all of East Tennessee. I go from Bristol to Cookeville down to Chattanooga, and it's a lot of fun to see what our college campuses are doing for student veterans. This is the guy in the west, the guy in the middle, and this is what we're here for. So most college campuses, cities, most football teams, basketball teams, they understand social acceptance down to the T. They give away free tickets, they hold parades, they do Veterans Day programming. It's a thing of of American society that we appreciate our nation's veterans. But I'm here to tell you that that's great, but that's not what's needed. What's needed is to build trust with the student veteran. The student veteran is coming out of this culture that is everything is you trust the people to the left and right of you and with your whole life, and then you come to a college campus and you're kind of this individual now that you're not used to being an individual. And so what I want you guys to think about from here on out is shifting the paradigm from that social acceptance of thank you for your service. That is needed, but that's not the most important part. The reception to your campus, the student veteran organization, developing an organization where they can meet each other, because you have quite a few student veterans here on on LeeU's campus. They may not know each other though, because for some reason or another, maybe they haven't, they're not wearing a uniform anymore. They are just like every other student. Going through transitional training is part of education, learning a new chapter in your life, and then having a veteran resource center is one of my favorite things to see a school do, because it takes veterans, it takes the services that you offer student veterans, and it like makes it huge, so that they have a place to go, and it's like a department within itself. So, building trust, first of all, you got to know who they are. And so what is a veteran? A veteran is anybody who served on active duty and has been honorably, or has been released on other than dishonorable conditions, which is practically everybody. The problem with this is when you're in the reserves and you've never been activated, and then you get out thinking that you have these benefits and you don't. And so, you've done 6 years in the reserves, you're excited to go to school, but now you don't have benefits. And so that leaves you in a vulnerable spot. And so what we want to do is give you an idea of, how to help them. And we'll talk about that later. As of 2017, almost 4 million Americans have volunteered to serve since September 11th. And the 3 reasons they join is education, service, and opportunity. Syracuse University up in New York did a huge study of like 3,000 people, and this was like 80% of their motivation was to get an education, to have a better opportunity, maybe get out of their hometown, move somewhere, and to serve their country. So that's what a veteran is, who is a student veteran. I told you that 4 million have volunteered since September 11th. Well, 3 million have entered some sort of higher education since then. So it is a big thing for veterans to get out or to stay in and continue their education. 30% are in business, 15% are in STEM, and many of them go into health. Whether they're corpsmen or medics, health is a industry that everybody can recognize that it's needed, and it'll provide you a job when you get out. And so I think veterans have this identity, they have a established identity, and so they know what they want to do when they get out. However, 62% are first-generation students. Myself, I'm a first-generation student, so I have no idea when I walk on a college campus what the process is. And so I know a lot of colleges start to think in different ways of how to help first-generation students. It might be helpful if you put student veterans into that category and figure out how to help this non-traditional demographic who doesn't know the academic system. And then 40% are going for a bachelor's, but there are quite a few that are going for technical certificates, starting at an associate's degree level. And I would say with the GI Bill, it makes that opportunity to achieve a graduate level degree. The other huge part is that every 4th veteran is most likely a woman. And so that, when I was growing up, a veteran to me was this old man with a shaggy beard and a funny hat. It's no longer that anymore. This generation is pretty representative of the demographic of America. And half of us are old enough and have children. So school's not their number one priority. Their family is. And so they're not going to be as connected to the campus as you would hope for them to be. And they're 80% are over the age of 25. The benefits that they get are both federal and state. Most people know the GI Bill. It provides 36 months of benefits, and that is while in training. So that's 4 years of school. In-state tuition and fees are paid, and actually Tennessee just passed a law that if you are taking classes in the state of Tennessee, you are not residing, but you live in Tennessee, and you're using GI Bill benefits, you get in-state tuition, which I know that doesn't mean a lot for a private school, but I think you guys are Yellow Ribbon.
We are. Yes, sir.
So a lot of private schools are going that way of covering that cost. So a veteran can essentially go to school for free.
May I offer something there, Greg?
Yes.
Just to let you know, at LeeU, students that are coming at 100% on this Chapter 33 are coming with tuition covered at LeeU. When they get their housing stipend, they're coming tuition fees, room and board in essence for free. So because of the way our tuition is so low, this benefit provides wonderful for those that are at 100% for the 36 months or 4 years that you see there.
That's great. So it's an awesome opportunity. And
I have a question
yes.
about, so some of the federal aid requires a certain like pace or satisfactory progress. What does that look like for this benefit?
So for the GI Bill, it's hard to explain without saying that it is an already earned benefit. So you've done your contract, and so it's not something that is like, if you do bad, they're going to take it away from you.
Okay.
You've already earned that benefit.
Okay.
So with that being said, the VA will only pay for classes that are within your track.
Okay.
And I want to say that after 3 times, then they start looking into your situation.
There are very specific requirements as to how many times you can repeat a course. Secondly, in all my time of being the certifying official for LeeU, there's only been 1 or 2 students we've called in and said, look, your grades are not going on. We've never pulled the benefits. As Greg has said, it's already earned. But we have had meetings with students before and said, look, you've got to be making progress. And if and when we're audited, we want to ensure that we're doing that.
Yeah.
That's helpful. Thank you.
I would also say, in my first year doing this job, we did a study of what is the dependent versus school-wide versus veteran GPA, and the veteran GPA was always higher on average. So that's not everybody, but it does say that the maturity of the military will make them more driven to complete that class.
You say dependent, you mean family members?
Yes.
There are some dependents can receive these benefits. This Chapter 33 is transferable. So
Yes.
Jalen was talking, we have about anywhere from 50 to 60 veterans on campus. Many of those, it's a growing population in the DAL, so they're not on campus. But more and more of those are dependents who are coming. To your point, they're receiving the benefits because of their parent. They didn't actually serve themselves, but they're receiving the military benefits.
Yes. And I'll touch on that later. It gives you a housing stipend. So it's whatever a 2-bedroom or one bed, one bath, whatever it is for that area. They'll give you a housing stipend for that, and then a book stipend is like $500 per semester. So essentially, you can go to college for free.
Yes.
The military is an awesome avenue to achieve whatever education level you want. FAFSA. Encourage your student veterans to apply for their FAFSA because it is not exclusive. You can have the GI Bill and you can also have the FAFSA. Within the state, we have the Tennessee Reconnect and the Tennessee Promise. That is more for your community colleges and technical schools. But part of that is we have a Veteran Reconnect grant that we offer schools to apply for to build a veteran resource center, or to we'll pay for the process if they'll start doing PLAs, so that more of their military credits count in college. And then we also have the Helping Heroes grant. If you've been deployed anywhere, I think the 375 eligible veterans, it's almost never filled. There's always open spaces. Because we've been trying to get the word out there, but it's hard to get people to know about this. But it's $1,000 a semester if you're a full time that is not associated with your GI Bill. It's something the state gives away to say thank you. So the misconceptions: not every veteran has educational benefits. We find at private schools that about 15% of your student veterans don't have benefits, and if you're not tracking them, then they're lost. They're lost in the system. Every resource, every meeting, everything that you do, they may not be connected because they don't have the benefit. They're not on the listserv to find out. Not every educational benefit transfers to dependents. As you were saying, they do, but it is a reenlistment thing. If you reenlist for another 4 years, then you can transfer your benefits to your dependents. Not every veteran wants to self-identify. That's something that's kind of lingered from Vietnam, and it's getting better with the culture shift, but it's still very prevalent of people getting out and not really wanting to disclose that they've served because they don't know what the civilian culture is like. Not every veteran knows that they are a veteran. I was that. I didn't deploy, and I was 22 years old. I didn't think that I was a veteran. It took a while for me to say, okay, regardless of whether I've deployed or not, I did serve my country. And so, and this last point is the biggest one. Not every veteran understands the process. I can't tell you how many times I was at the registrar's office and somebody showed up and said, I've got the GI Bill and I want to go to college. What do I do? And they hadn't applied to college. They hadn't applied for their benefits. There's a whole process that you got to go through to get your entitlement, and it's not always easy. So I would say, I know you guys have a work study that helps them through that process and sits them down if they show up here unannounced, just wanting to go to college. Because again, it's the first generation. We don't know what the process is. So Green Zone is this idea that sparked up out of the safe spaces conversation, and Green Zone was a military affiliated word that was not necessarily safe space, but meant the same thing. And so it was a thing where people could talk about, hey, go to the Green Zone. People would know that that's military affiliated. So about 3 million service members have been deployed, and almost half of them have been deployed at least twice. Your more prevalent ones are OEF and OIF. Enduring Freedom is Afghanistan, and Iraqi Freedom is Iraq. So you'll probably see somebody wearing some t-shirt or some hat that has the associated ribbon with it. It's kind of crazy that we've been in Afghanistan for over 15 years, and same with Iraq. So that may not be as prevalent now, but it very well could be as well. But we're not just in Afghanistan or Iraq. There's 177 countries that we're there for some reason, whether it's an embassy or Germany and South Korea and Japan are huge bases for us. So I once had somebody ask me, if a veteran sees an international student, is that going to send some bad, is that going to trigger them or send some bad vibes? And I would say no. I would say of the veterans that I've met, they went to Iraq or they went to Afghanistan, and they've been ingrained into that culture. They love falafel. They go out to eat at these Mediterranean places. They take Arabic classes because it's something they know. It's something that sparks memories, whether good or bad. It's something that they want to participate in. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about the deployment process so that you can kind of understand a little bit where they're coming from. So pre-deployment is very much a deployment in itself. It's long hours away from your family. It is training out in the field, whether locally, regionally, or nationally. But it's a whole it's simulated combat without somebody shooting back at you. And during this time, you also have to get your affairs in order. How many of you wrote a living will while you were in college? Nobody. You're not thinking about your family. You're not thinking about what if you die while you're 18 to 22 years old. A lot of veterans, that's part of the process of deploying, is you have to make sure that your family is taken care of when you go off. And so, you have to sign that power of attorney as well. To bring this back to college campuses, you may have reservists on your campus who are doing all of that while also taking classes. And so they're not really focused on classes. They're focusing on the next thing that they got to do for deployment. And so it's an added stress during school, and it is additional. It's a hassle to get an incomplete in the class or to withdraw from classes. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen where the veteran just leaves because they don't know the process, and they just go and they'll get all Fs on their classes, and then they owe the VA so much money. So having that open conversation with them in the beginning, if you know that they're a reservist or if you know that they have a possibility of deploying, saying, hey, my door's always open. If you got questions, we can talk about how to continue your education. Maybe not now, but when you come back. Deployment is a whole new adjustment. You're either in a combat zone or on a ship or on an airfield. It's a new climate, new terrain. The culture is different. The language is different. Even for a non-deployment situation, if you're in a country where you're the odd one out because you're the only one that speaks English, it's kind of hard to adjust to life. And so you're dealing with that on top of being at war. And so you also have the hypervigilance, always being on a state of alert, never taking the same route twice, always keeping watch over your buddies and keeping watch of the environment around you. It's high tension. And then you have to maintain emotional control. Whatever happens, you have to move on. The mission is what is the focus. There's a lot of sleep deprivation and a lot of fatigue. It's 10% intense adrenaline of the craziest you've ever felt in your life, and then 90% you're just sitting there watching the desert. The sun come up, sun comes down. It's a lot of the stories that you'll hear about their deployment is not that intense adrenaline. It is that 90% of boredom and the stuff that they got into. So some experience combat, but not everybody. The military is an organization within itself, and you'll have, most people think of the military as the riflemen, the people on the front lines, but a lot of times there's people who have to fill the gas. There's people who have to manage their paperwork. There's people who have to manage the vehicles and be mechanics. So it's a wide range of their experience while being deployed. Then they come home. It's a homecoming. For some, it's a honeymoon. It's a new normal. What was aggressive driving and cautious driving over there is totally different here. And then that tactical awareness is now this not really ending hypervigilance that lingers in civilian culture. So they're finally allowed to deal with that emotion of war and deal with the things that have happened, and that's going to be rough on the family. And I would say, think about the family. We talk about the dependents that are on your college campuses. They're probably separated from their loved one, and they are having difficulty concentrating while they're in class. I can't tell you how many students that were involved in the Student Veterans organization at UT who their father, their mother was an officer that was deployed to Morocco or something. And so spring break wasn't going home to Nashville. Spring break was, I got to find somewhere to go because I can't go home to Morocco. That's not my home. That's an embassy, or that's a military base. And then Ernie Pyle is a huge author and journalist from World War II, and I'm going to read the second quote. War coarsens people. Our men can't make this change from normal civilians into warriors and remain the same people. Even if they were away from you this long under normal circumstances, the mere process of maturing would change them, and they would not come home just as you knew them. Add that to the abnormal world that they've been plunged into, the new philosophies they have had to assume or perish inwardly, the horrors and delights and strange, wonderful things they have experienced, and they are bound to be different people from those that you sent away. If you've ever had a friend that went on a missionary trip, they come back and they're a little bit more mature. They have a different view on life, it's kind of the same thing. And so it's not a bad thing. It's just they're not going to come home the same person that you knew. When we talk about wounds of war, there's visible and invisible wounds of war. And even for the visible wounds of war, it can be rough. You know, you go from being in the peak physical shape of your life to now you may have a disability and you don't know how to deal with it. You don't know the things that are out there for you. And, you know, you're on college campus and you're adjusting to life. It helps if you know about the department or the office that helps with those services. Doesn't necessarily have to be the veterans office, but many college campuses have like a Office of Disability Services. Plugging them into that is huge. Spinal cord injury is something that is often occurring due to IEDs, which was very prevalent in Iraq. So that's one of the major ones that you'll see. Invisible wounds of war is the emotional or personality changes. Most people know of PTSD. About 20% have post-traumatic stress or TBI, which is caused from experiencing some sort of traumatic event or a jolt to the head from explosive or a crash or something. And with more a more diverse military, you also have military sexual trauma, which I think is kind of worse because you're in an environment where you are brother and sister and you depend on the people to the left and right of you for your life, and to experience sexual trauma in that environment just wipes away all forms of trust. So knowing the resources for potential student veterans that have trauma is something that will help you out. What does TBI and post-traumatic stress in the classroom look like? Having difficulty expressing themselves, having that restless behavior, inappropriate reactions to discussions, and just being withdrawn. And that's not something that you would associate with somebody who has this character strength and military work ethic. So it may be abnormal for them to just sit back and not participate in class. I would also say that of the veterans that have traumatic brain injury, they are some of the hardest workers I've ever met in my life. And I say that because I graduated college with a 3.1, and I struggled. And people with traumatic brain injury, they're getting like 4.0s because they know that they have a disability. They know that they struggle, and they seek out the resources and the help, and they are the ones that are dedicated to their education. So it may be a struggle in the classroom, but it's not a life ender. It's not something to just be like, oh well, maybe education's not for you. No, they're passionate about retaining that memory. So some suggested questions. I would say start off, if you want to get to know about their military service, ask them what branch, where they serve, how long they were in, what their job was. Simple stuff. You know, you're building that trust. You can't just dive in and ask them about their deployments and the things that they've done, because that's inappropriate. You wouldn't really ask a random person that. So why would you ask a student veteran just because you know that there's a potential? I would say, have you been called back to active duty? Or can you still be deployed? For active duty members who get off, it's kind of a silly question for them, but for a reservist, that's a huge maybe. So this is when it directly applies to LeeU. So reception, how are you welcoming your student veterans to campus? Veterans have the strength. They have the military training, the life experience, the worldly view that they're bringing to your campus. And they have leadership, time management, stress management. They've experienced life, so the exam isn't the end of their life. but they also have transitional issues. They have difficulty with the GI Bill. The VA is a monster, and it pays late. It will as soon as they find out a little small discrepancy, they will take their money. They are not afraid to get what's theirs. So that's difficult on a student veteran who doesn't know the process. And then they are possibly changing a whole new career path. They are going from my buddy did military police and went to criminal justice. Nothing transferred over. It was a whole new fresh start for him, even though the career is parallel. For me, I was a diesel mechanic and I went into business. I expected nothing was going to transfer. When I went through public speaking, I was like, this is a lot like corporal's course, except for without the physical regiment that you had to do every day. And so it was kind of disheartening to see that I had to take a class that I had already taken the class on. But as the state of Tennessee, we're getting better at that. And you'll find that about 60% of veterans attend more than one college. I think I'm up to 4 in my undergrad, and my graduate degrees are at the same university. So if somebody really wants their education, they're going to go to a community college or where they're at. And there's a ton of them around every military base. The initial contact at admissions is huge. Like I said before, not everybody knows that they're a veteran or wants to identify as one. So instead of saying, are you a veteran, saying, have you ever served in the U.S. military? No, have your parents ever served in the military? There's possibility for benefits out there for you. And then from there, you can ask like what branch or different questions, but this is a key opportunity for you to get out your information and to collect their information, to let them know about the resources that is available to them straight from the admissions form. And then that's a way for you to track them, whether they have benefits or not. Fee deferment is huge. I said that the VA payments are slow. Having some sort of fee deferment in place will help with the veterans' classes not getting canceled. Priority registration is another thing. The VA only pays for classes that veteran has to have, and so making sure that veteran gets into that class first makes that whole process easier, because the veterans, their benefit is associated with how many hours they take, and they have to be full-time. So if the VA is only going to pay for 3 classes that semester because they missed out on one, then that veteran loses out on time and money, because the VA will take that time and they won't pay the whole 100%. So you're helping them out by putting them into the classes that they need. A peer mentor system is something that is kind of new, but it is essentially when you get to a military base as a private, you are generally led around by a non-commissioned officer, a corporal, or a sergeant, and they show you, here's the chow hall, here's the gym, here's where you get all your paperwork done. It's a peer mentor. That's somebody that's going to lead them around, show them, not gonna hold them by the hand, but they're going to help them understand the system. And I think that could work at college campuses too, if you had juniors and seniors helping freshmen and sophomore, but that's harder. That's depending on if your student veterans want to take part in that, in addition to taking care of their families and taking care of their education and holding a full-time job. So it doesn't work that much. So just in the back of your mind, how do you make veterans feel welcome here at Lee, and how are there ways for you to engage and keep them connected? Inquire about the issues they're experiencing. Having that open communication from the beginning lets them know that you care. And then just become familiar with the information that's on your campus, the resources. And it doesn't necessarily have to be VA resources. It doesn't have to be veteran related. A lot of veterans come to college because they want a better job. And so what's better than knowing the career services that are available on your campus to get them in touch with everything that LeeU has to offer. Understanding the barriers of seeking help. As I said, it's a new adjustment to life, and they're not really used to seeking help. So you have to understand that they don't want to show weakness, but they still want to assess or access the resources that you have. And then express the understanding the first day, having that open dialogue, and discuss career goals, because that's the end goal of education, is to have a better career. So remember, student veterans are a unique population. There are numerous ways to help them. There's not one clear-cut path, and developing trust is important, and the following up and following through, and keeping yourself accountable, keeping them accountable. I'm not expecting you to be an expert or to solve their problems, but connecting them to the resources that can solve their problems is what I beg of you. Social acceptance. We talk about the parades, the Veterans Day events. I'm up here sweating.
We use this as a sauna.
Yeah. The military observances, the Memorial Day and Veterans Day, knowing the difference between them. And this may be a pet peeve of mine, but I see these Veterans Day programs that are somber, and they're just, they're reading off all the names in remembrance. And that's a good part, but that can't be the only part, because that's what Memorial Day is. Veterans Day is celebrating the veteran business owners and the veterans that are your staff and faculty, the veterans who are students, who are in this new chapter of their life. It's a celebration to me. I would rather see barbecues rather than this kind of sad ceremony. Because when you think about Memorial Day, you have the barbecues and you don't have the sad ceremony. So I don't know how we got them flipped, but just, participating in these events is huge. Branch birthdays. If you have any Marines in your classroom, they will let you know that it is the Marine Corps birthday on November 10th. It is a huge part of our esprit de corps. Military appreciation games. A lot of veterans are not in college to go to the football games, to go to the basketball games, or the baseball games, but it's a fun thing for their family. So inviting them, not just them, but their family as well, to the games helps. And then graduation ceremonies. That's a huge thing. You want them to graduate from your school, so you provide incentive, provide some sort of celebration. Hey, you made it through. You're 35 years old. You haven't been in class. You haven't been in any classroom for 18 years, but you made it. You made it through college. Something worth celebrating. Student veteran organizations. The campus environment, as I was saying kind of before, is in the military, you do everything together. You eat, sleep, hike, work out, study. You work together, and that may be your bunkmate. You're not separated from them. Every aspect of your life is together. But when you get to college and when you get to civilian life, you compartmentalize your life, and so everything is done as an individual, and you have different groups of friends. And so with the student veteran organization, you provide that camaraderie. And so student veterans can lose their sense of community because they go from this teamwork aspect to being alone, and now they feel alienated, they feel isolated from the rest of the world. But when they get connected to a student veteran organization, they can attend and participate in sporting events together. They can connect with others with similar experiences, be part of a team together, and challenge each other. The Marine Corps was big about keeping each other accountable and challenging and always pushing each other. And I found that at college, it was almost the opposite. There wasn't really a challenge. In fact, I had professors tell me, I don't care if you're here or not. If you want to pass, you'll pass on your own. And so it's a kind of depressing view of life, but that's what all students go through.
We don't have any of that at LeeU.
Good. Purpose. Joining the military gives you a sense of purpose, and you signed up for these core values to protect your family and your communities. You become leaders. You have this attention to detail, and there's this purpose to your life. And with an SVO, you can regain that sense of purpose. You can start planning. You can start having the opportunity to serve, whether it's Habitat for Humanity or just going to the local veteran center and talking to other veterans. And you can have this sense of achievement through SVO involvement. You have the self-worth again. When you're in uniform, people recognize who you are. They know your name. They know your rank. They can tell by what you have on your uniform almost everything about you. When you're a college student, you're the same as the next guy next to you, wearing a backpack. And so, because student veterans are removed from those math and English classes, connecting with a tutor and failing those classes can be crushing to them. They might have been a stellar soldier in their life, and then they come to college and they get their first D. It's crushing. And so connecting them with a student veteran gives them an opportunity to connect with peers who are both military and well researched in math and English and science. But it also gives professional development opportunities like this, common language and culture, and the leadership opportunities to continue what they've learned in the military to apply it to college. So the Veteran Resource Center, why this is important. You're an older student. That 85% of students, 85% of students are 24 years or older. You live off campus. That alienation happens. I've even seen where veterans have a class at 9 o'clock, but as soon as 8 o'clock hits, there's no more parking spots. So they will come at 7 o'clock in the morning, and they'll sit in their car and study, and then they'll go to class at 9, and then they'll go to work or go take care of their family. But it's kind of a situation of it. You keep deepening yourself into this alienation of not fitting in with the rest of the culture when you are sitting alone for a whole semester in your car, just waiting for the opportunity to go to class. And so that's where this common space, this place where you can study, where you're not going to be distracted, where your military language and culture can be shared, and where your military holidays and events can be celebrated. It's a central location so that you have veteran tutors. You can rent books and equipment. I think Austin P has a huge library of books that they rent out so that veterans don't have to use that book stipend. They can just go to the Veteran Center and rent the book. You can provide a counselor, the certifying official. That's where all the student veteran organizations can meet. And that's where veteran service organizations from out in town know exactly where the veteran is. And job opportunities. I can't tell you how many times a school has built or acquired a space for veterans, and now the employers are plugged into that campus, and at least once a month there's somebody going there recruiting because they know I'm going to get this person maybe as an intern now, but they have the military and life experience, and now they're going to get an education. So that's where I want to find my employees. Many of you are familiar with VFW or AMVETS and Wounded Warrior Project, but I would challenge you to go out and look for others. Team Rubicon is a huge disaster relief program that helps veterans, and what it does is it takes veterans from all over the country who volunteer to help out with like the Gatlinburg fires when that happened. A bunch of us from all over the South and the Northeast came to Gatlinburg, and we surveyed houses and we helped people kind of dig through the rubble to find their belongings. So in one essence, we were serving the community, but we were also reconnecting with our military culture, and being able to, sleep on a cot and have MREs. And it seems funny to say, but when you're doing it, it's a lot of fun. Team Red, White, and Blue is a running club. I think it's veterans out there in the community. I think their biggest thing is marathons. If somebody's wearing the Eagle, when you're running a marathon and you're all alone, somebody recognizes that and they can cheer you on. This is me down in South Carolina. I was volunteering with Team Rubicon when Columbia flooded. I think this was 2 years ago. We got to go, and it's called mucking out a house, but essentially if a house gets flooded, there's so much potential for black mold and stuff, and so you got to take out all of the insulation and the drywall. And so we would do that for free and save those homeowners half the cost of rebuilding their house. They can connect at this Veteran Resource Center with those resources, but they're no longer isolated. They can help to relate to fellow students, and it's just kind of a transition period for them. And the Student Veteran Support Team it's implementing this group that is your deans or your vice chancellors or your directors who either are veterans or want to support veterans. And so whenever there's an initiative or whenever there's something that directly relates to veterans, now you have the whole campus connected through a representative who can say, yeah, we'll do that, or that works for you, but that doesn't work for me. It's hugely beneficial at UT, and I know there's a few other. MTSU is another one where, if they didn't have that support team, then a lot of the student veterans they'd be having trouble finding resources because they wouldn't exist without somebody bringing it up and everybody else testing whether or not that resource was legitimate. And so I'm going to leave you. I think I have 15 minutes left, if that clock is correct.
That's correct. You're right.
Nice. Let us think of education as the means of developing our greatest abilities, because in each of us there is a private hope and dream which, fulfilled, can be translated into the benefit for everyone and greater strength for our nation. That was said at American Education Week by President John F. Kennedy, who is a famous Navy veteran. And so it just goes to show that veterans are leaders in the community. They're passionate about education, and they have even been the president. Does anybody have any other questions for me?
May I say, Greg, that with your permission, Greg has sent the PowerPoint to me. I'd be pleased to send it to you if you'd like to get it.
Absolutely.
A lot of good information in there that we're sharing. May I offer just a couple comments about what LeeU's doing? We have not gotten a student veteran organization like we talked about a couple of years ago. It's something that we haven't done. I appreciate your point there that says the school certifying official cannot do it himself or herself. That takes a collaborative effort, but we do have veterans in the room. We have veterans on campus. There's a veteran that I call him a friend of mine because he's very public in his own battle since he returned, and he's had a very difficult time. He posts and talks about how he's got his days of sobriety. He's a couple weeks away from 1 year of being sober student on our campus, and I'm proud of him. He's a wonderful, wonderful example of what I love about Lee. So we want to serve him better. So that's why we asked Greg to come today. So does anybody have a question about maybe something that you saw that we might ask Greg before he goes?
How does I didn't see you mention anything about the National Guard.
So that's my fault. When I say reserves or National Guard, it's
Okay.
the same thing in my mind, but I know it's not. And actually, that's a good point. National Guards have an entirely new benefit called the Strong Act, which do you guys use that here at Lee?
We're working through it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's, I think the next 3 or 4 years is the testing phase to see if it will work out. But it's essentially, if you are in the Tennessee National Guard, the National Guard wants to pay for your associate's degree or bachelor's degree as well.
I mean, if we did have an SBO, what does your office do to support that? Is there like a collaboration effect to it, other than, and you mentioned some grants,
Mm-hmm.
but does that then come in contact with you and you have kind of a cooperative
Yes. So
relationship?
my role was hired essentially to be that connective tissue, so that your campus would know about what other campuses are doing, and student veteran organizations would know, what I went through to develop a student organization. But not only that, but I can connect you to maybe one at Cleveland State or down at UTC or Chattanooga State, so that you don't have to struggle alone. And some of the things that you're going through, maybe they've already experienced. I don't like to brag that I have a state car, but I have a state car, so I'm always willing to drive down here to Cleveland at no expense to myself to help you guys out. And so we also have seen where the National Student Veterans of America does these national conferences and these regional conferences. And so for the past 4 years, what we've been doing is we've been trying to get that here, but also we hold our own conferences at the end of September in Nashville, and for staff and faculty in March. It's 2 different trainings, but we bring in people from all over the United States and all over Tennessee to talk about their successes and their struggles with helping student veterans. And it's totally free to you guys. It would just be make your way to Nashville, and we'll provide the food and everything else.
Other questions for Greg?
Question for you, Phil. Have we identified all the veterans on campus?
Not the way that we should. There are a couple issues that play here. Those that are receiving veterans benefits, we know those students. We go into our student information system colleague and we'll identify them now that we can identify them.
I would love to know who's in the school of business as a veteran.
Yeah, that would be great. So, and then we have dependents as well. But if they're not receiving veterans benefits, we don't know about them. And some of them may be reluctant to identify, but
Sure.
we have a list of those who receive benefits, absolutely. So in terms of sharing all that, we'd be eager to do that to help serve them better.
And I do find that many veterans will identify that they're a veteran on FAFSA, but won't on a college application. So some schools have figured out how to contact them that way.
Our FAFSA folks will protect that to the end. She will say, you're not getting information from my cold, dead hand.
Yeah.
Courtney.
Is there a way that you guys help waive the application fee? If they're like, maybe we'd be able to find out if they had served or if they were dependent right before they even apply?
It's one of those things. We tried to do a study on whether that was effective or not, and it was like 50-50. There was no like clear-cut sign that worked. It was definitely helpful, and any student veteran that you talk to, they will explain their struggle in doing that, but through that struggle, they committed to paying that fee and going to that college, and that was an additional, motivation to keep going because they had to pay the fee.
Let me say, from a standpoint of student financial services are not here today, anytime we have late fees or issues that come up from deferred payments, we waive those fees all the time. It sometimes happens after the fact, and we always are sorry about that, but we don't make anybody pay. Any of our veterans pay. We get them registered, mostly without even having the benefit sometimes certified, because we want to serve and appreciate what they're doing. Secondly, we have a program on campus, Greg, I don't know if I've ever told you about, but our baseball team has made a big deal about it, Military Appreciation Day, and it's become a big deal in the local community, and we're proud of what they're doing. They have an event at a baseball game every year because our baseball coach, it comes from a military family, he's very committed to that. So,
Yeah.
But again, we have room to do better. The SVO in particular, perhaps some of you that are here today, we might follow up with you and ask for your help or guidance in that regard, because we're eager to do it and do a better job of serving our veterans.
And
The game is this Saturday.
The game is this Saturday?
Yeah.
Did we have
21st, is that this Saturday?
It is this Saturday.
Yeah,
There we
this
go.
Saturday.
This Saturday.
And I would say I love those events because it gets the community involved in your campus. And so when you have these VFWs and these AMVETs who are seeing that this campus appreciates their veterans, there's a high percentage that if you've served, your grandchildren are more likely to serve. And so, as an adult in the community, when your grandchildren or your children come back from war, you're going to be like, Lee University is a place for you to go. It's, they've treated me well. I've been to their baseball games. There's tons of veterans there. It's a recruiting benefit to just do those activities.
And they've started a scholarship this year too. That's been a big push for this weekend. Other questions for Gregg? Will you thank him for coming today if you don't mind? Appreciate it, Gregg. Thank you very much.